Hello everyone, in the course on global trade and commerce, today I am going to tell you all about foreign direct investment. What is foreign direct investment? When a foreign company invests in another country and has complete control and stake over it, then it just becomes a foreign direct investment. Generally, foreign direct investment is very long term and the investor has complete control, as I said, over the company. The Organization of Cooperation and Economic Development, OECD, defines control as owning 10% stake in the foreign firm. So, if you have 10% stake or more, then it is considered to be a foreign direct investment. Now, most of the foreign direct investments that take place in another country are done by multinational corporations, MNCs, or sometimes they are also called as multilateral enterprises, that is MNCs. Now, when a foreign company sets up a completely new firm in another country, it becomes greenfield investment, or if there is an acquisition of a foreign firm, then it becomes acquisition, or if some investment is made in an existing company, then it becomes a brownfield investment. So, it could be completely new like a greenfield, and if the foreign company kind of renovates an old firm, it becomes brownfield acquisition, or it could also be called simply acquisition. So, this is very important when it comes to FDI. First of all, it is long term, and secondly, it could be greenfield, it could be brownfield, and also it could have something called acquisition as well. Now, what are the objectives of FDI? Why do foreign firms come and invest in India? Why do foreign investors come to another country to invest? First is basically there are three types of FDI. One is market seeking, the second is resource seeking, and the third is efficiency seeking. So, in resource seeking, foreign firms come to another country basically to enjoy the benefits of the raw materials that the country has and low labor costs. In market seeking, for instance, most of the FDI firms come because there is a huge domestic demand, and a classic example of that is India. For instance, many foreign firms come to India to exploit the domestic demand and the aspirational middle class, which has a consumerist tendency, and therefore to exploit that, many foreign direct investment comes to India. Third, of course, as I said, is efficiency seeking. Most of the foreign firms, if they want to kind of disperse their global risk, if they want to spread their risk, if they want to go in for international specialization, then they want to go for global sourcing. For these kind of reasons also FDI comes into another country. So, please remember there are three types of FDI. One is market seeking, one is resource seeking, and the third is efficiency seeking. Now, what are the determinants of FDI? Under what circumstances that FDI comes to a particular country? First is the economic conditions that prevail in a particular country. For example, the market size, as I told you. If the market size is very good, if the domestic demand is high, for in countries like India and some of the other South Asian countries, then there is a tendency for foreign investment to kind of concentrate there. The rate of return, urbanization, labor cost, human capital, physical infrastructure, macroeconomic fundamentals like inflation, financial health of the country, tax regimes, ease of doing business. These are some of the factors that determine why FDI comes into a particular country. And then also, of course, you have the host country policies which are very conducive to FDI. There is promotion of private ownership, efficient financial market, trade policies which are FDI friendly. So, these are some of there is less interference of the bureaucracy. So, because of some of these factors that FDI comes into particular countries. So, basically the determinants of FDI could be based on economic conditions and also very conducive host country policies. Now, what are the advantages of having FDI come into your country? First is that you have access to markets. FDI can be an effective way to access other markets. It is an effective way to enter for exports and for other activities. You get access to resources. If you don't have enough resources, you could rely on the other country in whom you are investing to get those resources. And basically, when you are producing in bulk, you kind of feel the economies of scale, and it reduces your cost of production, because in some countries the labor market reforms are implemented well, labor is very cheap, and therefore it's well known that shoe and clothing industries tend to concentrate in developing countries because the conditions in these countries are ideal for large scale production. So, basically access to markets, access to resources, reduce cost of production, And also the major advantage of FDI is that, there is technology transfer that happens to local firms, and local governments and local businesses get to learn new managerial skills, new technical skills, and which helps them grow locally. So these are some of the major advantages of having FDI come into your country. When you look at the global trends or the world trends in investment, of late, because of the slowdown that the global economy is experiencing, we see that FDI inflows have drastically declined. For instance, the UNCTAD report states that foreign direct investment inflows declined by nearly 1% to 1.39 trillion US dollars in the year 2019 from 1.41 million trillion dollars in the year 2018. So you see that there is basically little bit of slowdown in global FDI inflows due to the global slowdown and recession, and also because most of the economies have become protectionist, they are looking inwards. There's anti-immigration sentiment, nationalist sentiments across countries, and because of these reasons, because of the uncertainty in the global economic climate, you see that global FDI inflows have drastically reduced. And most of the FDI inflows, the total global FDI inflows, more than 50% or more are concentrated in the developing countries. However, the flows to developing countries have also decreased by nearly 6%. Now, when you talk about cross-border mergers and acquisitions, they have also decreased by 40% in 2019, which is the lowest since 2015, and this is mainly due to the sluggish Eurozone and the Brexit, the exit of Britain from the European Union, and of course the fact that the European Union is looking inwards, they are becoming more protectionist. We see that the mergers and acquisitions have come down drastically, and the fall is the deepest in the services sector with 56% decline, manufacturing primary sector which declined by 19 and 41% respectively. However, despite this, the fact that cross-border mergers and acquisitions have declined by nearly 40% in the developed world, especially in Europe and the United Kingdom, South Asia has recorded a 10% increase in FDI, and this growth was also major in India with an increase of 16% FDI flows. And of course, Bangladesh and Pakistan also saw a decline in FDI flows, but India was an exception to this trend, and it saw increased FDI inflows in the year 2019. So overall, South Asia has been doing very well when it comes to foreign direct investment inflows. FDI in Asia increased by nearly 3.9%, but other than that, FDI inflows into South Asia and overall Asia have done very well. When you look at the concentration of FDI inflows within India, some of the advanced states have attracted the maximum FDI. For instance, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Delhi, Andhra Pradesh and Gujarat are the leading states when it comes to foreign direct investment. And the sectors where the foreign direct investment is coming in is basically led by the service sector. The service sector has got the maximum FDI in India, followed by computer software, telecommunications, construction, etc. So you see that I want to bring in a one point here. The fact that in India there is a mismatch between the FDI policy and export policy of the country. What are your major export sector? Gems and jewelry, machinery, light machinery, engineering goods, marine products, pharmaceuticals. Well, however, FDI is coming to constructions, telecommunications and services. FDI is not coming into your export sector, and that is a major drawback in the case of India. However, some of the leading states and some of the sectors, especially the service sector, has done very well with regard to FDI. What is one of the major reasons why FDI is coming into India? It's because of the ease of doing business measures that the government has implemented. For instance, now the ease of doing business ranking in the case of India has gone up. India is now at the 63rd position in 190 countries. India is ranked 63rd, and the major reason for this is of course the implementation of the IBC, the Insolvency and the Bankruptcy Code, which has really facilitated foreign direct investment coming into India. According to a World Bank report, introduction of IBC has made 470 companies to commence liquidation proceedings, and more than 20 companies have agreed to go in for reorganization, and this is a huge relief for creditors, especially credible creditors, to seize the companies when they default on loans. So the IBC has largely contributed to making the Indian FDI environment more conducive. And also India has been trying to simplify its FDI rules. So basically, if you look at liberalization FDI policy in India, earlier FDI used to be allowed only in select sectors. Now FDI is unlimited. It is allowed in almost all the sectors except security and defense. FDI is allowed 100% in all the sectors. So basically, institutional reforms have also taken place with respect to FDI. You have the FIPB, Foreign Investment Promotion Board, you have the Secretarial of Industrial Assistance, and you have the Foreign Investment Implementation Authority, which looks into. So basically, the impact of FDI inflows in India has been that there is an increase in FDI flows, there is realization of FDI inflows, increase in FDI in infrastructure, more financial collaboration, and an increase in non-acquisition mode, and FDI is coming to India from a large number of countries. Basically, the difficulty with regard to FDI still exists in terms of infrastructure bottlenecks, rigid and complicated labor laws, lack of coordination between the center and the states, ceilings and caps on foreign equity, and time-taking procedures. Basically, there are two routes through which FDI comes into India. One is the automatic route and one is the government route. Most of the investment can come in through the automatic route. Only some investment which comes into sensitive sectors or which is above a certain limit requires the approval of the government route. So the future on FDI in India remains good, especially from the Indian context. We are doing well. However, the pandemic has caused a great setback. Most of the MNCs have suffered. The sectors which have suffered the most are automobiles and energy, airlines. These are some of the sectors which have been worst affected by the FDI, but we hope that in the coming months and quarters, definitely the situation will improve and India will continue to attract the maximum FDI. Thank you.